Welcome back to Tea with the OT. I'm Becca Mattie. I am an occupational therapist specializing in pediatrics with sensory integration and self-regulation being two of my main passions in practice. And Tea with the OT is my episodes on YouTube that are geared towards kind of pulling the curtain back, answering questions that I commonly get in practice from families or just people that I'm connecting with in the community. So today, one of the big questions that I'm answering is, why does it always look like you're just playing games in the sessions with my child? And this is a really big question I get, and I want to just take some time to answer it today. Now, I want to be clear that when I get asked this question by parents, it is never from a place of anger or animosity. It's from genuine curiosity of, I just see you playing games. So how does that translate into therapy? And I think part of where this question is rooted is that as adults, we have this notion of what therapy is supposed to look like, whether you think it or you have had therapy in the past and it's really just been this talk therapy, and you've never really interacted with play-based therapy like what I do in my occupational therapy practice. And so when we are thinking about how our child's therapy is supposed to look like, we know there is a specific skill our child might be working on, and so then we expect to see them working on that skill in every session. But I just saw you playing Twister during the whole session. So I just want to talk a little bit about how I develop my therapy sessions and what that thought process really looks like. And when I develop a session for a child, I look at what their goals are, obviously, first and foremost, and then I consider where they are at right now and where we are in the therapeutic relationship or the therapeutic process. If we're just starting out and building that relationship, or building that trust that we've been, that's going to be part of the focus of our session. Or if we've been together for a while and the trust is there and the therapeutic relationship is strong, once I have that stuff in the front of my mind, I think about what I want to target in each individual session. Because as much as I would like to, I can't target every single goal in a single 1 hour or 45-minute session. So let's say this month in our 2 to 3 or 4 sessions, we're going to really target one goal in particular. And the goal is, for example, identifying and reporting on their emotions accurately. Because there's a lot in that realm that I've worked with in self-regulation or emotional regulation. And so one of the first steps for children in that realm is being able to identify how they feel and accurately report it to others. So we want them to be able to share their feelings to someone like a teacher or a parent. And that's when I'm developing the session to think about that goal and being able to notice what we feel and more accurately report it so that we can actually work on what each of those pieces feels like. So then, if I know that's the goal, I can break that down into what are the skills that are needed to be able to not only notice how I feel, but then be able to report it to somebody who can help me with that. So we need to be able to listen to our body. We need to be able to slow our body down or at least pause and listen to our body. And now I'm thinking about what games and activities target pausing, because that's the first step and a building block for taking this big abstract goal of sharing our feelings and breaking it down into tiny pieces and then figuring out how we can use that in play. So we want to target that goal through play because a child's primary occupation is play. Children learn through play, they develop important skills through play naturally, and so building the therapeutic process around play is going to be the most beneficial. When we play, we are opening up a child's brain for creativity, imagination, and ultimately learning. There is evidence to show that children learn more quickly when they are introduced to a skill through play, introduced to that skill and then able to practice it within play, as opposed to just being lectured to or told over and over again what the right answer is and expecting that rote memorization, when they are able to practice it and play in that context, they are more easily able to integrate it into their own processes and thoughts and movements throughout the day. So, coming back to my example of learning how to pause our body, I might play a game first at the beginning of a session of like a freeze dance. So it serves two purposes, a game like that, because at the beginning of our OT session, we want to also maybe get some movement incorporated, especially if it's after school. So then we get to dance, we get to move our bodies, and we get to practice that pause. We are pausing from an external cue, and the second purpose, like I said, is that movement, and we're moving our bodies. Then we are practicing that pause together. So the other thing I like to make sure I'm doing, which is probably why it looks like I'm playing during the OT sessions too, is I like to model my expectations for the child, because I like to engage in the play with them. And the engagement from my perspective is the connection that we're making. So not only are we targeting the skill and I am modeling what the skill is for them, but I'm building the foundation of making our therapeutic relationship even stronger together. The next activity that I might plan for a session, if we are learning about taking pause before reacting to a situation, so we can assess how we feel, might be doing an activity where we are identifying emotions or feelings. And depending on where the child is, we're going to do that activity identifying the emotions or feelings within ourselves that we've had in the past, or identifying the emotions of somebody that we are reading about or in a video model. So I've used in the past like an emotion matching game, like the card, like a memory game. So we flip the card over. When we get a match, we talk about that emotion that we see and what makes us feel that way, or when we have felt that way in the past, and how we reacted or how we responded to feeling that way, and maybe what helped us. So this is something that made me feel sad. This is what helped me feel better. And so it's just a way to then engage in that open conversation and that reflection, because that is another big skill, is being able to reflect and share how we are feeling. So we've practiced the pause, we've practiced the identification of the emotions, and then I'm going to talk directly through either a lesson or another activity where we're going to talk about when something happens that makes us feel a certain way and the reaction that we have. The reaction is what we can control if we can make it if we can make it to that pause. So I've worked with older kids who have identified that pause before reacting to something is one of the hardest parts, because they want to react immediately, and that reaction may not always be the most effective for the outcome that they want to have. So working on that pause is something that we identified together as something that they wanted to work on. So we work on that for a while, that pause between action and reaction. We talk about maybe some skills like deep breathing. So there's a mix of play and lessons happening in the session. But again, the emphasis is on that play, that engagement in an activity together, to then root their learning in that connection between each other. So they're spending that full therapeutic hour playing games, feeling free to ask and share about their feelings and that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind, that while what you see for that hour of therapy looks like playing silly games, it sounds like playing silly games because we're laughing and we're joking, but there is a lot going on in the background. And there was a lot of planning happening leading up to that. And so I also want to encourage, if you are a caregiver or a parent who has a child in therapy, to not only ask your therapist what they're doing during therapy, why they're doing it, but also to ask if you can be involved, because then it's going to be yet another way for you to learn, as well as the caregiver, how you can make these games even more rooted in the goals that you have for your child. So I'm not expecting, with that suggestion, I'm not expecting parents to become their child's therapists, but even just playing these games for a few minutes at home, like a freeze dance, and then practice that pausing. That's all it takes to carry over some of these skills that we are practicing in OT. And everybody loves a little sensory break, a little dance break at the end of the day. And so it serves those purposes of connection, relationship building, and then targeting those really specific goals that your child might be working on in social connection. So if you feel, when you are playing with your child and you feel distracted by the weight of a lot of responsibilities as a parent, even if you can give just 5 minutes of full connection, that's going to make the difference between playtime that got the job done and a playtime that really solidified the foundation of connection that we all need, that sense of belonging. So we all crave that connection and we all want to be together. Thank you so much again for listening and following along. And I hope this made sense to you and helped highlight the power of play and helped to kind of pull the curtain back, like I mentioned, on what's really happening in a therapy session. I look forward to speaking with you again. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I will happily answer them in future episodes. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me for Tea with the OT.